Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. This week, we're talking about how you define wealth. So let's dive in.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland. Presented by Prairie View Wealth and Tax Advisors. Live your 2-comma life.
Wealth. So it doesn't always mean moolah, baby.
Yeah, that's right. It's so funny. So like people ask us like, oh, what do you do? And we'll say like, I'll tell them, oh, we own a wealth and tax advisory business. And they're like, immediately like,
so
wah,
what
wah.
do you, so what do you do? But also I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I don't know. Thanks, but no thanks. I got a lot. Like, because I think people hear wealth and they're like, they think something different, right? And I wish we could come up with a better word for it because I think it's so much more than money or, like whatever that word conjures in your mind.
It's not all physical assets.
Yes. No, you mean physical assets? Yes.
Well, some of our wealth is in physical assets.
Yeah, we can't all be Katie Umland, right? And so I think, but I do think that that's part of it. When you talk physical assets, like I think about wealth being longevity. What's that old saying that a healthy man has many dreams, but a sick man has one. And so it's like, I think that is a part of wealth. Nobody wants a bunch of money that they can't spend because they're unhealthy.
And also like the stress of not having, I feel like it could go either way. Stress of having no money or stress of having too much money is neither as good for your health.
Say, Katie, more money, more problems, right? Yeah. Well, it is. No, you're right. And so, and there's actually been a lot of studies done that show that there's this, gap or period of time where if you're below a certain wealth level, you have extreme stress because you're worried about subsiding and just how do I live? Then you hit this, once you get past that, you have this period of really healthy, happy, every dollar I make means something more to me because my lifestyle is really expanded. But then once you get past a certain point, that's not the case anymore.
Yep, goes back
down. It actually
down.
starts to diminish again. And so, wealth isn't always about
more.
The biggest stack in the bank. So.
Well, and like how many times do you see like the happiest people in the world aren't the richest always necessarily, like it in money.
100%. Yeah. I say recently, probably a few years ago now, I listened to a sermon. One of the pastors that had like a podcast, I was listening to a sermon, and he was talking about the at this large organization. It was a large church organization. They had one of the wealthiest people that was there who had passed away. He had been a large benefactor to the church, and the funeral was almost empty. But then when the janitor of the place passed away,
right,
it was almost full because that janitor talked to everybody who came in, knew everybody, and so the money side of things isn't always the biggest answer or the right answer.
Or like the best like of happiness or
and so really when you start thinking about how do you measure wealth, our suggestion is that we really try to take as much of a full picture as we can, which runs the whole gamut of life. And if we're not, when we talk about financial freedom, if we're not hitting on all of the other parts of wealth, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. And so that's where we start thinking about things like, what is my health? What are my personal relationships? Where am I living? What am I doing? How am I spending my time? That kind of stuff really starts to develop.
Well, and if you do have, some extra income or extra money, what are you spending it on?
Yeah,
and
no, exactly.
Is it making you happy or?
Yeah. Well, it's so funny you say it because Sarah and I were just, now that we're these almost practically empty nesters, we have this new habit of Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday is go out to eat night.
Yeah, that's a lot of days. That's a good week.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so like that's our thing. We like to go out to eat, but all of a sudden Timmy is coming home for the summer. He's like, just I'm taking control of the checkbook. He's like,
we cannot do this.
He's like, this is ridiculous. You've got because and there's some truth to that. But for Sarah and I, when we look at it, that's a time for us to reconnect. It's a time for us for her to be able to relax. She does most of the stuff around the house and everything. And so a lot of times, like after dinner or even during dinner, it's harder for us to engage because that's her work time.
Right.
And so for us to go out to eat, we're spending money we probably don't need to. Maybe I'm getting some calories I shouldn't have. But on the flip side, it adds to our overall wealth because our relationship is stronger.
It's getting stronger.
Yeah.
That makes me think that this week we are potty training Quinny.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. Well,
go team.
Yeah, it is so much harder with two, but it just makes me think like I told Alex, like, can we just order dinner every night this week?
Yes.
Like I need to not have that also on my agenda.
Yep.
And like, no, is it money we need to be spending, but is it going to make us all happier?
Yes. So like, that's kind of like some of that money is going to food. Some of it's going to mental health.
Exactly. So, it's a split cost.
Yeah. 100%. Well, and I think that's part of like, which the whole potty training thing's so funny. It's because it kind of links back to this wealth thing. So Sarah and I both tend to be type A personalities, right? We're like things a certain way. We're hard charging. People have told me that. I don't know.
You've heard that maybe
true.
once?
I don't know if that's true,
okay.
But yeah, I've heard that. But I remember when we were potty training Grace, I say we, like I had
anything to do with it.
Yeah, it was mostly a Sarah thing. But I remember like Grace was getting older and older, and like she's not getting potty trained like with the other kids. Like we were on a schedule and stuff. And Sarah finally, she was like, you know what I decided? I have never met an adult who wasn't potty trained.
Right.
Grace will get this figured out when Grace is ready to do it.
Yeah.
And so like for us, that was an awakening when you talk about wealth, because in our family, that created so much less pressure, less stress. It probably was
just
easier
turned
for
it way
Grace.
down.
It just adjusted the whole setting. And so I think that with that kind of stuff, that all adds to what is the wealth that you have in your house.
If we're talking about like turning the dial down, our house is the exact opposite right now. The dial is like turned as much as it possibly can be.
two young kids and twin skis on the way.
Exactly. So we have like a list of things that are like, the fire's burning, man. We got to get this rolling. Done.
Yeah. Well, and so as you start thinking about that, I think we all go through those seasons where you have to be like fire up. But when you talk about like true wealth, and even it happens in all areas of your life. If you think about relationships, every relationship you have will go through periods of being really strong and not
connected.
So strong. That's right. And then disconnected. But yet when you think about the trajectory of what do I want my lifetime wealth to be in relationship, I want more good times than not great times, right? And so as long as we're building on that trajectory, then my wealth is growing in that area. Same thing with my health. I'll go through periods where my nutrition is really good and I'm exercising all the time. And then you end up with some reason you're out of that groove and you're not so much. But yet if your trajectory is that every year you're getting a little bit better or a little more healthy.
Our graph is still on the
upside. And it's the same thing even with your investments and your money. Not only does the stock market or your investment returns go up and down and change your wealth, but also we go through periods of being good with money and not so good with money, where you're spending more than you should, or maybe you're not spending enough and you're undercutting life. And so it's the same thing. If that trajectory though is heading in the direction you want it to, then you're
it's like the same thing with everything. Like you were comparing it to like health and wellness. Like you can't look at what you weigh this hour versus the next hour and make a conclusion if
am I
if
on
it's
the right
working
path or not.
You have to look at, you have to weigh yourself maybe twice a day for a month and look at the results. Because you might be holding water one day and then you lose it the next.
You mean like after I just went out to eat on Wednesday night? On Thursday, I might.
Thursday might be fine, but then you're back at it the next day. So, but it's the same thing. Like you can't just look at
for sure
a one day.
Well, and I think too, it goes to kind of our point of view is that you should live life intentionally, and like the next 4 years of your life, 5 years of your life are going to go by regardless. So, do you want at the end of the 5 years to say I did? Or I wish I had.
Right.
And so if you start thinking about those different areas of life, you can think about, well, in 5 years, what do I want my health to look like? If I think about where do I want it tomorrow, that can be kind of defeating
Mm-hmm.
because I can't make a lot of change.
Leaps and bounds
tomorrow.
is not happening. Yeah.
But if I think about 5 years from now, I could do a lot in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with my education or my knowledge. Maybe like this whole, let's use AI as an example. Everybody talks AI. Well, I'm not going to learn everything I want to learn in a day or two or a week. But if I think about what could I learn in 5 years, I could be an expert in 5 years if I wanted to. And so it's like all of those things. And so if we're intentional across all of the categories of our life and start living intentionally that way, you can redefine what does wealth look like. Yes, your bank account, but it's also all these other things.
And I think it definitely changes throughout your life, how you would define wealth. Like right now for Alex and I, it's saying we have enough money to pay a babysitter to come play with Dylan while I potty train Quinny.
Yep.
And that is money well spent for us right now.
Yep.
But in 3 years, that's not
the deal.
Where I'm going to be putting that.
Well, who knows, with Twinskies on the way.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, 3 years, I guess maybe that is exactly what I'll be doing. Probably.
Okay, life plan, check.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And so I think to your point, it does change over your lifetime. But I think there's some things that really kind of don't also. And it goes to like, what are your core values?
Right.
Like for us, when we had little kids all the way to today, and I'm assuming for the rest of our life, being close to family is going to be one of the wealth factors that we have. Like if I had all the money in the world, but my relationships with my kids and my mom, and my siblings, and if those things were crap, then that's not wealth, right? And so I think that it's looking at those and then trying to be intentional with how do I build on each of those throughout the course of my life.
Well, and I think, like I said, it changes throughout your life, but the core is still there. So like, it's always been important for you and Sarah to have a good relationship.
Yep.
Well, at the beginning of your marriage, when you had no money, maybe that meant you bought the seven for $7 or whatever, sevens, whatever appetizers you guys would always.
Sevens.
Triple sevens.
Sarah made me triple sevens. Thanks for calling that out. I need to get back to that.
That's a prime life.
Yeah, it was. Now that I'm past 40, well, probably past 45 even, I probably need to dial that back to no more triple sevens. The triple sevens was it had a variety, but it was 7 pizza rolls, 7 mozzarella sticks, and like 7 jalapeno poppers. I'd call when I was on the way home because back in those days I'd work usually at least till 9. And I'd be on the way home and she'd say, you want some triple sevens when you get home? And,
yep. But that might not have been an expense that she was willing to buy all the time.
Yeah.
But if it was a chance for you guys to sit down together.
Yep.
So like it looks different throughout your life maybe, but that core value of like, oh, we still need to connect was there.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So,
no, you're right. And I think what happens with that sometimes is like everything else, if you're not keeping an eye on what your total wealth picture is, you can start to let parts suffer and get away from you. And it's kind of like we always say, like, choose your hard. Do we want the hard right now of getting up to go to the gym before you go to the office? Or do you want the hard of being 65 and not being able to play with the grandkids? Which do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the wealth that you're trying to build. So for me, I've got it in my mind right now that I want to water ski when I'm 90 with my great grandkids. That's what I want to do. No, I don't water ski today.
I was just going to say, do you water ski now?
Now? There was a point in my life when I did some water skiing, but and so I'm like, in my mind, that's
a priority right now.
Yeah, I think about that. Like if I could do that, imagine all the other stuff.
If you can do that, that means you can do a whole slew of other things. I can play
baseball catch with them, or I can do whatever, right? But if I wake up when I'm 86 and decide that's what I want to do, it ain't going to work real well. But if I start working on it when I'm 47, that's something that now can be a reality. And it's the same thing with your money. To sit down with your money and look and say, oh my gosh, I've got credit card debt or student loan debt, or I was really bad and we shouldn't have put that pool in and borrowed the money on the house to do it, or whatever it is. Like, yeah, that seems like it can be overwhelming. But when you put that against the backdrop of, I'm going to be here for another 30 to 50 to 60 years. Man, I got plenty of time that I can make that change and achieve the wealth status that I'm looking for in each of those categories, which goes a long way. And so our encouragement as we sit down with folks is to really look and say, how do we plan on all of those things? This is not just a money conversation. It's funny. We've got, as we're recording this, we've got interns that'll be starting in the next month or so. We always have 3 interns throughout the summertime. And at the end of that, I would be willing to bet that I have the same conversation with them as I have with all the other ones. They're like, man, this is like a counseling session.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even really talk money that much, like that kind of stuff.
When you sit down with clients.
And that's what looking at our idea of defining what your true wealth is and what are you trying to accomplish, because it's way more than just a money conversation.
Whenever interns start, I always think like, oh, we're pretty much the same age. And then like once like they get in the office and I talk to them, I'm like, we're not the same age.
You're not. You're not.
But in my mind, like, oh yeah, me too, girl.
Yeah,
like,
I just recently graduated. Oh, maybe not. Yeah.
It seems like we are, and then it's like, no.
Yeah. So it's like, it's funny because for us, it's similar. As I've gotten older, it's like at some point you went from being the young up and comer to like the old guy in the room, right? And it's like,
don't realize it's happening.
Well, it's like you don't know where that happened, but there is a switch that took place, and somebody didn't tell you the switch was happening, but the switch
and you didn't have any input in it.
None. Yeah. So from our perspective, I think it really does come down to just be intentional. Think about the different categories of your life, and think about how, like, if I didn't have this, how does that affect my feeling of overall wealth? And what are the important things? So like if you go down and say relationship, what are the key relationships and what does success there look like? I think some people define that differently. For Sarah and I, success there is probably our children and grandchildren spending significant amounts of time with us.
Wanting to spend significant
time, going on vacation with us probably once a year, that kind of stuff. That would be wealth for us. In relationship. When we think about health, I told you, I just got this, I'm 90, I'm water skiing. Now if I can work backwards from that, and that tells me a lot of things, right? It tells me, okay, well, watch your sugar intake, make sure you don't become diabetic, make sure you're getting your weight down and you're moving. And Sarah and I were just talking about this over dinner, one of our out to eat nights last week. And I was telling
you're just supporting small businesses.
I am. That's
all it is.
All it is. And our farmers.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but I told her then, I was like, maybe I should start doing yoga. Now people see, a big guy come in to do yoga, and it's probably a funny thought, but I'm thinking like, if I want to do that, my balance,
agile,
my flexibility, all of those things are going to have to be there. And so it's like that one definition of wealth kind of starts to set this whole other path. And same thing with like money. If I think I want to retire and I don't, but if I did want to retire at 55, that starts to set my path on, okay, well, maybe Timmy's right. Maybe we shouldn't go out to eat 3 times this week. Maybe I should take one of those times and use that to pad the retirement account a little bit more to get me to that, just sets up all of those.
Isn't it so funny, like how your kids, but people in general are different. Like Timmy hears that and thinks, I'm taking over the checkbook. And Grace is probably like, sounds great.
Yeah,
like,
whatever. It's so funny. Yeah.
I'm coming with.
Exactly. Grace, the one who has what do they call that girl math? Like she is the one. Yeah. She has like mastered it. She was born with that gene. Like I think we've talked about it previously, but I love her mentality because like I hate it and I love it. So Tim probably has a ledger of every dollar he made and where he spent it. Like that's who he is. Grace is like, she has no clue where her money is, no clue how much she has. And when you talked about it, like, Grace, you have to keep track of your money. She's like, no, my system gives me only upside. She's like, I'm like, how is that possible? She's like, well, because if I open my wallet and I didn't realize I had money in there.
Great.
Awesome. Look at I'm excited.
Speedy freeze.
Yeah. If I don't realize I have money in my wallet and I lose it, I'm not
Doesn't
upset.
matter. Yeah.
I never knew I had it. Never knew I had it. So she's like, all I have is upside.
Yeah.
There's no downside to my method. So So there are two definitions of wealth.
Are different.
Much different. Yeah. So if you gave Timmy a confirmation card and it had money on it, he still remembers that.
Yeah, and he still thinks you.
And he still has it. So I think as we kind of wrap this up and maybe land the plane a little bit, I think that what we find is that the people that are truly the happiest that are the ones that look at their wealth in a much more rounded way. As we start at the outset of this, we see a lot of people who have a lot of money wealth, but they've done that at the exclusion of all of the other parts of their life.
And you know what, as we're talking about this, maybe it's even what makes you even happier is actually sitting down and defining it.
Yep.
Like most people probably don't do that.
Mm-mm.
They
just kind of float through and live it. And, yep.
And you might, if you realize like, oh, this is how I would define wealth.
Yeah.
You might be in a different
100%. Well,
mindset
it's things that like you don't even always think about, like spirituality. How many times have you set goals around your faith and around your walk with God and how you want to be as a Christian or what have you? And like, that's not something you always do, or you don't think about maybe that part of your life. But when I sit down and think about it, and I go through, there's 6 categories that I define every year at the beginning of the year. I write goals in all 6 categories. And when I start doing that conversation in my mind, like it opens up a lot of possibility, a lot of possible wealth. So in that category, that's kind of how Sarah and I became foster parents originally, CASA folks most recently, because as I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking like, okay, how do I come into this world in a Christian way with all the gifts and with the seriousness that I put all of my other goals.
Mm-hmm.
And so probably like we haven't executed on it, which I feel bad about, but I think we will fairly soon. What we were talking about was maybe splitting our time and saying, if we take a week vacation as a family, then why do we not do a week mission trip? Right. And how much more spiritually would we grow because of that? And so that's one area that a lot of times people don't even think about or talk about. But when you think about your overall wealth, think about how much happier life is if you have a really strong spiritual centering and you're growing in that part of your life. And same thing then with your health, and same thing with, and so to your point, it's like a lot of times you don't even think about some of those things. And then you just end up, okay, I went for my annual physical and I put on another 5 pounds, but I'm a little older, so it's okay, or whatever, instead of being really intentional.
Or just assuming, I don't want to spend $120 on a gym membership, but I'll easily spend $120 on going out to dinner once.
Yes.
But if you were intentional about,
how do you
might realize like, well, that was stupid.
Yeah.
I can spend $120 on a gym membership a month when I'm spending it on different things that I don't, and that aren't meeting my goals. Like,
and the things that we're seeing now that are so crazy, like, and I don't want to, maybe we'll do this another episode, but, the healthcare system in our country is so broken.
Downstream. Yeah.
It's like, it is sick care. It is not healthcare.
Right.
And so it's like, if you started looking at that and saying, okay, that $120 gym membership is going to keep me from becoming diabetic. It's going to keep me from getting high blood pressure. It's going to keep me from doing all these things, because your doctor's not going to tell you, get the gym membership, start working out, start doing these things. But when you get there, all of a sudden your drug bill is going to be, $200 a month. And you've got all of this other junk where if you would have done the gym membership, it would have been cheaper and you would
in
have
a better spot.
So
every time you keep trying to land the plane, I keep talking.
That's okay.
So
that's right. That's just how it goes. Learning to become a pilot, what I found is that when the plane is ready to land,
it just does it. It just does it.
Land. When it's not ready, and it just keep going. So,
well, let's move on.
So wealth in your family is potty trained kids and a house that's prepared for twinskies.
Yeah, something like that. We decided to spend money on like lawn care service this year. Like it really is giving us the time back is the wealth that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, 100%.
What's going to make life easier and more manageable.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that all goes to your longer term goal of being present with the kids, so that you guys have good relationships. So like you go down that list, which is the same thing why I'm imagining for you and Alex, it was important for you to be mostly a mom, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's important for you as a person to be here and to do, outside of mom things, but it's also primarily our priority is the kids, and that's part of our wealth. So how do I focus on being a mom?
Yeah. So, and your kids are probably almost home for done with home kind of, but then they're here and gone, and internships and
all kinds
trips
of stuff.
And
it's good stuff though. Yeah. We're going to go on vacation this summertime again together. So looking forward to that. And
it's so exciting.
It's all good stuff.
And I think Maddie has some study abroad.
Tim and Maddie both. Tim will be home for a couple of days, and then he heads to Colombia for a month, and then Maddie is heading to Berlin. So,
nice. For how long?
She's only there 2.5 weeks.
Okay. So that's what I would have guessed for Timmy. A month is a long time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a full month. It might be like 3.5 weeks, but it's close to a month. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So all good things.
Kind of a full house again.
Kind of a full house.
At least back to the chaos of a full house of here and gone and back and forth. And
and we'll take it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us today. For more resources, head to pv-wp.com.
The Retirement Readiness Podcast with Tim Regan and Katie Umland. Presented by Prairie View Wealth and Tax Advisors. Live your 2-comma life. Learn more at pv-wp.com. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Retirement Readiness Podcast on your preferred podcast platform.